Imagine with me a world where victims of sexual abuse do not feel shame in coming forward and to have access to affordable medical care. Where, and this will be harder, would-be perpetrators of sexual abuse have a safe place to go before they hurt someone. I want you to imagine these things and for them to become real, because I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. However, today I do not see myself as a victim, but rather on a path toward healing and ownership. My journey to healing has also become a mission to create a society where our children, girls and boys, are less likely to experience the same type of pain I did. This means that our communities must come together to come alongside victims as well as would-be perpetrators to end the cycle of violence. When we experience trauma, we have a choice: to hold it in and suppress it, or to open up and share our struggle. No matter what trauma you carry, it is always difficult to share your account. I believe it is especially hard for men like me who have survived sexual abuse. Society tells men to project strength and emotional control. So even though culture tells me to hide my pain and to put a brave face on, I am choosing vulnerability and authenticity. Today, I share my story because I believe sharing it has made me stronger and more connected to people going through similar pain, and that sharing it has set me on a path to healing. At the time my abuse began, I was maybe 3 or 4, and that abuse became my normal for the next 8 years. Like so many survivors of sexual abuse, I struggled to make sense of what happened to me. According to the National Center for Victims of Crime, statistics show that 1 in 5 females and 1 in 20 males are sexually assaulted in their lifetime. That is an estimate of 31.4 million women and 7.6 million men in the United States alone. I want you to let those numbers sink in for a moment. 39 million people. Often, I wonder why it took me so long to tell someone I was being molested. It took a very pointed question from my mother one night for me to finally share my dark secret. When I sheepishly answered her question, I saw the agony spread across her face, and for the first time, I saw my father cry. In that moment, everything changed. When you share your story, the pain doesn't just magically disappear as if, whew, so glad I got that off my chest, let's just move on and be happy now. I was lucky, though, in a few ways. I had access to mental health care, and I was surrounded by people who loved and supported me. My parents knew that a therapist should be able to help me, and they made sacrifices to ensure I had access to care. In the beginning, I saw the therapist as futile, though. I'm sure if I talked, it might have helped me along in my healing process, but at the time, I wasn't ready. Being forced to talk seemingly made my pain worse, and all I wanted to do was run from the room. Silence became my coping mechanism as I pushed the agony deep inside and tried to forget it. No one could help me. As I began to understand more of the magnitude of what happened to me, I began to feel rage, along with questions I didn't have answers to, such as, why was this allowed to happen to me? How could I ever trust anyone again? Why could I not protect myself? And why had I not said something sooner? Before I go on, I want to have a conversation about mental health and how important access to care is in ending the cycle of sexual abuse. There's at least 2 problems in gaining access to mental health care. First is having the financial means available to get the care. Children of sexual abuse are a vulnerable population. but those who come from underserved communities, communities that are struggling to meet their basic needs, this hurdle alone can put access to care out of reach. Second is the hurdle of stigma for using mental health care. People would applaud me for seeing a dentist to treat an abscessed tooth. They wouldn't wonder what is wrong with me or if I'm somehow dangerous. But in disclosing that I have a therapist, I'm not extended the same understanding. It isn't immediately accepted or normalized that by seeing a therapist, I'm taking care of myself and my body. As a man, and certainly as an adolescent boy, I had to fight cultural training about what is valued as a man. And that created another layer of stigma. We must commit to reducing the barriers to getting affordable options to physical and mental health services for all children who experience sexual abuse. My story picks up as a teenager transitioning into college. I'd resolved talking only created more pain I couldn't process, and no one could help me. Essentially, I locked myself in a room with my pain, and I couldn't find a way out. Luckily, I learned I was wrong. There's 3 pivotal people that came alongside me at just the right time. In my later teens, I met a person I'll call Hannah, who I told my struggle to, and she, in turn, told me she'd also been sexually abused. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. Because of the trust and mutual understanding I gained from talking to this one person, I had the courage to tell more people about what happened. The more open and vulnerable I became, the more I realized other people were hurting and bore their own traumas. I had a newfound freedom. The second friend, Kenny, came when I learned another lesson. In 2015, I graduated from college and I started working in finance. When I picked my major and career, I didn't ever anticipate how intense finance can be. And I soon found my trauma resurfacing as a young professional. Let me be clear, I had the education and training to be successful, but the stress of doing my job amplified the feelings of self-doubt and inadequacies put in place by my childhood trauma. An unfortunate truth is that even as adults, victims of childhood sexual abuse are more likely to view relationships and life's more difficult moments as insurmountable obstacles. Eventually, I walked away from my job and I went into a deep depressive phase. I didn't trust that I could develop the coping skills I needed to manage a real job or life as I saw my friends doing. And the lies I told myself had only been confirmed by my failure at the job. Kenny came alongside me and helped me to see that I have worth just because I exist. Kenny helped me to value my life again by forcing me to get out into the world instead of wallowing in my self-pity and misery. I began to understand that my job didn't give me value. Another convenient cultural lie we tell ourselves. I have value just because I am me. There's an important lesson in here about how to break the cycles of sexual abuse. What if communities came alongside victims instead of shaming them and making them feel like somehow this was their fault? As a man, it is hard to come forward. Just to stand before you today, I have to combat the mental chatter that says I'm weak for being a man that was abused. This thought that I actively work to counter is a thought that must be removed from our society. Too many victims, regardless of gender, never report their abuse. Too many times when victims do report their abuse, it is mishandled, dismissed, or picked apart as fabrications and illusions. We are making strides in the Me Too era, but there's more work to do. If you know someone who has been abused, many times the best thing you can do is listen to them. Listen and hold them when they cry. Be there to support them as they work through their pain. I wish I could tell you after this, I actively started to heal myself. But my path has one more important curve. It was a final experience with my friend Jay that really set me on the path to healing and standing before you today. Jay invited me to join him in Taiwan to teach English, and I decided to take the plunge. I believe I'd been there maybe 3 days before I had my first breakdown. I told Jay how lost and depressed I was, and I connected my failures to my childhood trauma as wounds just never seemed to fully heal. Things slowly started to unravel after this night. On the inside, I thought it was fine, but on the outside, my personality began to change. I started to have fits of rage again that came out of nowhere. Also, because I was ashamed of my failures, I started to lie to everyone and inflate my life and story to make myself look big and important. After months of fighting, Jay finally told me I had to leave and get help. At first, I was angry. How could he just turn on me? But this became a wake-up call. I slowly began to see how I was hurting the people around me who loved and wanted the best for me. Eventually, I went home. I started to see doctors, counselors, and I went on medication for depression. Jay taught me another valuable lesson. I have power to take my life in new directions, to keep writing and rewriting my life script. What happened in the past does not have to define my future. I bear responsibility for my actions. 2 years later now, after moving back to Wisconsin, I have hope I can move on. My journey to healing is continuous. I must constantly fight myself and my negative thoughts. If you know someone who has been abused, and if you have been abused, I encourage you to speak up. Tell someone you trust and keep talking of your pain and struggles. Go get help before it becomes too late. Don't let your world come crashing down on you. There is hope, and there is a better way forward. The more I've told my story, the more I meet people just like me who are in different stages of dealing with their trauma. And that has given me hope and courage to keep going. I want to live to see solutions put in place that end the cycle of sexual abuse. I want to live to see a day when children do not have to worry about being hurt in this type of way. It is a senseless and destructive crime that is carried by children for the rest of their lives. It is time we have more discussions around this topic and bring about a change. I hope today that you join the discussion and help bring about that change. Thank you.